In that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction. In the negative utopia, science, technology, social organization, dehumanization. In the negative utopia, science, technology, social organization. Technology, social organization, dehumanization. Technology,
Mr.
social
Davos.
organization.
Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show. Thanks to Albert Zappa for these images and, of course, for the track Vincenzo Viceversa, who is also the author of these fantastic book covers. And welcome to the Leo Zagami Show from Leo Zagami and Christy.
Hi.
So here we go. We have a very interesting subject today. Everybody's talking about Alexei Navalny as a hero, depicting him as the ultimate martyr. But there is more to it, of course. And so we will be discussing that and much more. Because as you know, the first half an hour of our show, we just go from one news to the other, pertaining, of course, to the last few days.
Mm-hmm. No, first we talk about our sponsors.
Well, that is what I was about to introduce with Christy, the sponsors that permit today's show.
We have Margarizana Minta and Bruce Kodish. Thank you very much. And to everyone who bought the books, thank you very much. We had a good week, so we appreciate it, and we appreciate you, and thank you very much.
Absolutely. And if we have more appreciation, we will show it with a new episode also of the Illuminati Occult Illuminati.
Yeah, so if you want one of those,
if you want one of those,
for a donation,
yes, you can intervene by donating anonymously.
It's
or
more like sponsoring
public.
it.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's a
sponsoring it.
sponsorship for the broadcast, and you can do it with GoFundMe, or if you are in Great Britain or in the United States, also through Cash App. So GoFundMe here on the screen. We have been banned, removed from PayPal, and we had a lot of problems with the other methods of payment that we had put. So these are the ones that we trust more. They never gave us any problems. So here we go, GoFundMe. And welcome to the Leo Zagami show for something that, of course, has happened in the last 24 hours, because on Friday, basically, Alexei Navalny suddenly died. The actual explanation by the Russian authorities is a sudden death, but the body has not been given back to the family, but rather kept in their I don't know where, in the storage, frozen possibly. Well, he was in a place beyond
Siberia?
Well, yeah, beyond the Arctic. So I mean, it's like a frozen, cold place that, guys, it's like temperatures are really, they kill you. So he could have been killed, though, by either Putin or either NATO, and both of them had reasons to kill this guy and transforming him in a martyr. The fact that suddenly the wife appears at the Munich Security Conference, which is in Munich, guys. So, I mean, it's like the home of the Illuminati almost. So here we go. Actually, not almost. It was, in a way. And of course, we have an understanding today. When I put together this show, I explained to Chrissy that we will be dealing and going very deep in what generates figures like Alexei Navalny and people like Volodymyr Zelensky and all the current revolutions, because it's very important today to dig deep and not only on the surface. We like to dig deep. We like to pick up from maybe what is happening. And so it's going to be a very interesting show about Navalny, especially because there is a video that was published, a clip at least of it, by George Papadopoulos on his Twitter account, but was originally broadcast on Russia Today television at the end of January, and then it was picked up by and described by an article that came out on RT.com on the 1st of February. This is really where I mean, we are left astonished, because we see that there was a level of corruption from the supposed organization that was created to fight corruption by Alexei Navalny, which, I mean, it leaves us a little bit, like, what is this? It's the usual show, the usual theater.
It made him sound like a real nice guy.
And not only that, it's becoming like almost a saint. It's just incredible. And we have Biden that praises him, of course, exposing Putin immediately as an evil doer, without still the evidence of what happened. Maybe he died of natural causes, maybe not, but you can't immediately make these assumptions. This is what happens today.
I'm heading off to East Palestine in a moment, but I wanted to say a few.
What did he say?
What did he say?
No, what did he say?
I don't know what he said.
I don't know.
To East Palestine in a moment.
He's going to East
He's
Palestine.
mumbling.
Yes, it's mumbling.
But I wanted to say a few things this morning about Alexei Navalny. You know, like millions of people around the world, I'm literally both not surprised and outraged by the news.
It's like the propaganda machine, a massive psyop has started from the very same people that offered us from the start never-ending promotion of the figure of Volodymyr Zelensky, and at the same time also before that all the BS from the scandemic. Well, all those people are now mobilitated to glorify and almost sanctify the figure of Alexei Alexei Navalny.
Reported death of Alexei Navalny. He bravely stood up to the corruption, the violence, and all the bad things that the Putin government was doing. In response, Putin had him poisoned, he had him arrested, he had him prosecuted for fabricated crimes, he sentenced him to prison, he was held in isolation. Even all that didn't stop him from calling out Putin's lies. Even in prison, he was a powerful voice for the truth, which is kind of amazing when you think about it.
An FBI informant at the center of the impeachment inquiry into you has been indicted for allegedly lying. Your reaction to that, and should the inquiry be dropped?
He is lying, and it should be dropped, and it's just been a...
So, in other countries, of course, everybody's a liar, everybody's a fraud, Putin is a criminal, but here we are talking about, of course, the fact that there was this direct involvement, him and his son, in this supposed corruption accusation that turned out to be some kind of setup or a false allegation by somebody who is now coming out as such. But we really don't know, because we can't trust anybody in this game, that's for sure.
It's been an outrageous effort from the beginning.
It's an outrageous effort when they are attacking him. I mean, if you're attacking Joe Biden, you're in for an outrageous effort.
No, I'm serious.
Not running for party. And the reaction to Joe Biden not running.
See you in Ohio.
Usual Biden. Christy, you want to go and turn the air conditioning up and down. Welcome to the Leo Zagami show. Today, Saturday, February 17th of the year of the Lord 2024. We are discussing Alexei Navalny. Alexei Navalny, though, was an activist and a product of a system that has been created with the ultimate support, of course, in the end, of the usual open society of George Soros and now Alex Soros. So let's understand a little bit more about that in a little while. For the moment, I wanted to show instead the children of East Palestine that don't want Joe Biden to sniff them, and that is pretty normal. I mean, Joe Biden is well known for having, apart from the fact that he goes to East Palestine, where they had a terrible accident after over a year that the accident took place, and I think, or at least
Palestine in America.
East Palestine, yes, Palestine, yes, East Palestine, and of course, East Palestine, no sniffing for Biden, from these people who say that he has done too little, too late.
Brandon! Let's go, Brandon! Let's go, Brandon! Let's go!
That's the message. That's the message to Biden right there. Too little, too late. How you guys doing? There you go, guys. Out here in East Palestine, this is Joe Biden finally showing up more than a year later. And that's the message. Real simple. Too little, too late. Joe, too little, too late. All right, Mike, why is everyone out here?
This is Trump country here. This is nothing but a political stunt. Mike Ruley says he's going to be our next congressman. This town needs $250 to $300 million. Our slogan is too little, too late, Mr. Biden.
Yeah.
This town, yeah. You don't see any support in this town for Mr. Biden.
Yeah. You say Mr. Biden.
Yeah, Mr. Biden.
That's it.
Mr. Biden.
Yep. God bless you guys.
God bless you too as well.
Good to see you. Let me see those ones. Hold them up.
Don't sniff me.
There you go. Resident, not president.
So, don't sniff me, huh? Christy, what do you think?
It's not even funny, really.
Don't sniff me, Joe. Don't sniff me, Joe. I love it. Latinos for Trump. Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico. I love it. God bless you.
Oh my God, I'm so happy.
That's East Palestine, baby.
I don't think that Biden's trip over there will change anything. it's not really his thing. I mean, of course, that's a red area, but also it's the disappointment that these people have with the president who for a long time didn't do anything for this terrible tragedy that polluted and probably will damage these people for years to come, with all the chemicals that are still probably to be filtered from all the surrounding areas where this accident happened. This accident, by the way, as we remembered, once again had almost been announced with that TV series also that appeared on Netflix that showed that was something that happened. That was a kind of a mad synchronicity, by the way, we can say. In any case, Biden can do nothing wrong if you talk with Karine Jean-Pierre. So Karine Jean-Pierre, whatever Biden does is fine. Karine Jean-Pierre, the master liar.
Thanks a lot, Karine. The other day you were talking about the crime rate across the country, and you were absolutely correct in saying how the crime rate has gone down in several large cities, New York and Chicago, but here in the district it is not. There were 274 homicides here in the District of Columbia in 2023. That's the highest murder rate in more than 2 decades, since 1997. This is the president's home, at least a few days a week. What can he do personally about?
You expect an answer that brings a bit of substance, but can you expect that from Karine Jean-Pierre?
No.
Absolutely not.
Reducing the level of crime that we're seeing here in the nation's capital.
So let me just be very clear, all violent crime, not just here, all violent crime anywhere is completely unacceptable. We just want to make that very clear here. You know, every community in this country should feel safe, want to be safe, and so that's important. But I will say this, you know, congressional Republicans, they don't seem to feel that way. And I say this because the president has taken action. From the first piece of legislation that he signed into law, American Rescue Plan, only Democrats voted for that. Republicans didn't vote for that. There was billions of dollars in that plan, and they didn't vote for it. And so, look, we need to do more.
Remember, it's always they can do more. Biden has done nothing wrong.
But the president has taken this very seriously.
Yeah, he takes everything very seriously, which is complete BS. Whatever. Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Christy. And of course, the news today that we have discussed just at the beginning, but we will deeply go into it in a few minutes, is the death of Alexei Navalny, who was basically killed after the FSB had actually showed on TV the really unprecedented level of treason, organizing a coup with money, of course, that was coming
having
from
a nightmare.
What?
Rambo
is having a nightmare. Rambo is having a nightmare. It can happen.
Maybe it's okay.
It's okay.
I might have to go shake him.
Well, go and shake a Rambo. Go and shake a Rambo. In the meantime, one of the most funny events of the week was probably Fannie Willis, Black Panther father.
He was worried Biden was going to sniff him.
Okay, so Fannie Willis as a father. His father is, of course, the most left-wing guy you can ever imagine. He had to go and testify. Fannie Willis this week was in court. As you know, it became a big charade that in the end it becomes also very much something that can distort the attention from real things. So you use like a case like the one where you have Fannie Willis, the district attorney, basically has unleashed on Trump an inexistent court case, like many of the other Democrats, district attorney nominated by the Democratic Party, that are unleashing all this judiciary nonsense, which will probably always be appealed and won in the end by Donald J. Trump. But it's made so they can, in some way, in their minds, convince the people that Trump is then inelectable. But the most funny thing was the talk also about the cash, because there was a lot of talk about Fannie Willis, and if he went out with this dude, then she got to work for her. See if she was going out with her before she got him to work for her, or and of course the father had to intervene. The father probably lied, just as they lied, because there was a witness that confirmed instead that Fannie Willis was going out with this lawyer that then later she nominated. But at the same time, she was going out also with a DJ, so she is very active. DJing around wedding parties and stuff. Nothing incredible, but still, I mean, Fannie Willis is very much into the dancing around, let's say. This is the father.
Good morning. Good morning, Council. When your daughter moved or left the house that she owned, did she say anything to you about having a large savings of cash? Oh, no. See, maybe, excuse me, and Your Honor, I'm not trying to be racist, okay? But it's a black thing, okay? You know, I was trained. And most black folks, they hide cash or they keep cash. And I trained, you always keep some cash, because I've been places, and just because of the color of my skin, for example, I took a fellowship at Harvard when my daughter was just, if I might, Your Honor, when I was just, she was just, maybe 3 years old. And I remember going to a restaurant in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I had a American Express credit card and maybe a Visa or whatever. And I had a lot of what they call traveler's checks. I don't even know if they still have traveler's checks, but traveler's checks. And there was a sign said, with the credit card. For whatever reasons, the man would not take my American Express credit card.
So now you have to throw it into the whole racist context, because it's a Black Panther.
I don't understand why that was relevant.
No, it was completely irrelevant. This judge was a guy with no balls. When Fannie Willis herself came into the court, she didn't come back, because of course she was digging her own grave when she appeared with nonchalance, almost like she was kind of like there to make them a favor, and she was annoyed by it, and her attitude really sucked. So that was what the whole psyop of the week was all about. The week precedent to that, there was of course the Super Bowl that ended up, unfortunately, with the parade, the nonsense, catastrophe, let's say, more than nonsense, a catastrophe, that we are still not knowledgeable really what is the reason of this shooting. But in any case, people in a way were killed. And fortunately, it wasn't a big amount of victims, but still a lot of people got injured. So I mean, there were even children that got injured. Terrible things that happened. But this is, of course, something that if they could, they would have blamed definitely on Trump, but they couldn't. So that was it. And the moment they can blame it on Trump, the news quickly disappears from the... Because it's all about the media and how you work with the news. So that is why this week I'm showing you a video that should be in every media, in every news, discussed everywhere. And instead, they're trying to do everything possible to remove this video and to not let you see this video, because this is an act of corruption, and the people involved with it are basically an MI6 agent and a member of the the guy who basically was in charge of the so-called anti-corruption foundation that Alexei Navalny established in 2011. The guy is called Vladimir Ashurkov. So this is basically with what is said here, and I want you to clearly watch what is said here, because it's basically an act not only of treason, but something that, of course, surprises us. Now, the people are watching us live on Facebook, on YouTube. and they will be watching us in the next few hours also on band.video, it's important that you realize that the reality of things surrounding the whole Alexei Navalny case is completely distorted. And the guy was very corrupt, and he was trying to get from a guy from the British intelligence, MI6, who was, of course, working with money that is provided by Soros. In fact, Russia Today has talked about colored revolutions, just like Vladimir Putin has talked last year and accused the people who fomented this colored revolution. And then, of course, you have also Ursula von der Nazi, the head of the European, head of the European Union. Look what she said about
Alexei Nawalnys ist grauenhaft.
I found out I'm not German.
Aber sie zeigt auch, dass Putin nichts mehr fürchtet als den Widerspruch seiner eigenen.
Yes. Alexei Navalny, jawohl.
I'm less German than I thought.
Well, that's okay. But in the meantime, let's get down to the video that we are supposed to show to our audience, so we can then talk about everything that is behind it, because it's important that we realize what is behind it. So let me a second get there, because, of course, the first thing is the evidence that we have against Alexei Navalny.
We would expand our activities, of course, with a little money. If somebody would spend
a little money, and soon we will be talking about millions, 20 millions, so not a little money. The guy is basically a representative, an assistant of Alexei Navalny, FBK Executive Director Vladimir Ashurkov. The Anti-Corruption Foundation was declared a foreign agent by the Ministry of Justice in Russia in 2019, but they are now operating internationally.
Supporting this, we would see quite different picture, and this is not big amounts of money for people who have billions at stake in this game. So that's the message that I'm trying to project in my fundraising effort and talking to people in business communities. You need to play on different chessboards. Mass protests, civil initiatives, propaganda, establishing contacts with the elite and explaining to them that we are reasonable people and not we're not going to demolish everything and take away their assets, things like that. So we'll see what comes out of that. So this broadly describes what I do.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, not a small job.
Okay, so here is basically two people in a Moscow cafe that are a video testimony collected by the Russian intelligence, by the FSB, which is the modern heirs to what used to be the KGB. I wrote and published an article about it on leozagami.com that will give you a further inside on the whole thing. These are images from not the clip, but the whole, the entire, the integral version, which unfortunately is not available to us today, the whole thing, but shows this guy who is presented by RT as James William Thomas Ford, MI6 agent, who goes and meet with this guy who, of course, claims to be part of the, he is the assistant, he is part of the Russian opposition. And here you see really a direct involvement in a foreign nation. It's kind of scandalous because, I mean, here is a representative from the embassy, but he's also MI6 agent, from what the FSB is saying, giving money possibly in the future to Alexei Navalny. And he was, in fact, accused of being a CIA agent by Vladimir Putin already after his poisoning in 2020, because what happens here is like it's impossible that it's a coincidence that this video is made public and then after a couple of weeks the guy dies. It is obvious that the whole thing comes in a package, and the fact that the Western media don't want to discuss this video in particular, because this video is of course something that in some way shows the involvement, the instigation of a coup in a foreign country by a member of NATO like Great Britain, which is, but some people can get misled because they say then, but is it Great Britain or is it George Soros? George Soros, you see, is the financier of these so-called colored revolutions. And Alexei Navalny, of course, became one of the tools of this possible revolution in Russia that never happened. But like I said, the Kremlin was kind of immediate in accusing, Kremlin says Navalny works with CIA after accused Putin of poisoning. So this happened already in 2020. It was only a matter of time until Vladimir Putin will do something. So it's possible that it's been Vladimir Putin, but also there is a big suspicion also in regards to NATO. I mean, how is possible that also NATO is doing this Munich Security Council event that they hold once a year, and suddenly the wife of Alexei Navalny is there? It's kind of a little bit of a show. Stage. Completely staged. I mean, it's just...
she just happens to be here in the audience.
Oh, here she is. Here she is.
Наверное, вы все уже видели приходящие сегодня ужасные новости. Я долго думала, стоит ли мне выйти сюда или сразу лететь к моим детям. Но потом я подумала, что бы сделал Алексей на моем месте. И я уверена, что он бы был здесь.
I mean, come on, guys. It looks like she had rehearsed for this role already for a couple of months. It looks
so
like
what happened then?
The whole thing is staged. I mean,
so did she know her husband was killed?
Of course, the husband is killed. She's talking about it. She's blaming immediately Vladimir Putin, like most of the Western leaders. They all blamed immediately Vladimir Putin without any shred of evidence. Even even Joe Biden, I mean, immediately said, "Oh, Putin is the one responsible for it." So it's a little bit about. And then you have Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris in Munich. Look what she says.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Before I begin today, we've all just received reports that Alexei Navalny has died in Russia. This is, of course, terrible news, which we are working to confirm. My prayers are with his family, including his wife, Yulia, who is with us today. And if confirmed...
This was before she gave a speech. She's with us today, the first day of Kamala there, and already she has this woman ready, delivering her own staged talk, emotional.
Would be a further sign of Putin's brutality. Whatever story they tell,
is Vladimir Putin.
Let us be clear, Russia is responsible. And we will have more to say on this later.
So the usual staged events that on one side and the other seem to be all staged and badly staged at times, also with the timing. I mean,
they come up with the same crap all the time. It's always the Russians. It's always this. It's always...
But I mean, the colored revolutions have been partly constructed because of Russia. That's what is the colored revolution? It's something that comes from the playbook of George Soros. But nobody really understood who is behind George Soros. who is George Soros inspired by? So I went and investigated a little bit here regarding the open society and a number of organizations that have been working to subvert and to destabilize the New World Disorder, transforming it in today's New World Disorder. It was New World Order, now it's New World Disorder. But the organizations that have been involved in all this is, of course, the open society. The open society today is in the hands of George Soros' heir, which is basically Alex Soros. And Alex Soros today is a guy who is quite young, but he likes the lady a little bit older, maybe, I don't know. He is basically in Paris making a romantic trip for St. Valentine's with Uma Aberdeen, the ex-lesbian lover and collaborator of Hillary Clinton. So this is basically the reality of the whole thing. Now, but before we go deep into what is behind all this, because Uma Aberdeen, 47, Alex Soros, 38. So Alex Soros will become the toy boy of Uma Aberdeen. What do you think about this, Christine?
I like the way you say toy boy.
It's a little bit like Fannie Willis, who had to pay a lot of cash to have the guy delivering him delivering her some action.
No comment.
No comment. Okay, so welcome to the Leo Zagami show. At this point, let me also put once again on the screen the GoFundMe before we go deep into the origins of the open society, because the open society might seem something that is born with George Soros, but that's not the case. There was an organization that was active before the open society, and that organization was actually exposed in the second half of the 60s as working for the CIA. So they were about to close that organization, and this billionaire picked it up, and it was George Soros, because this organization seemed at the time an organization that wasn't that useful, because you see, with the fall of the Soviet Union, there was the impression that everything will change. So here we have an organization that George Soros basically created and then expanded, not only with the name Open Society, but with a number of names connected to a number of organizations. Now, the Open Society Foundation is inspired by a book by the philosopher Karl Popper, a book which is called The Open Society and Its Enemies. This is basically the book that inspired, let's say, philosophically, the beginning of Soros' activity. But in reality, Soros was simply joining a club of very powerful people who had an organization that needed to be taken over. It was like no longer what it used to be. That organization was called the Congress for Cultural Freedom. And here we go and show you what I'm talking about, because this is very important in our story. It was founded in West Berlin in 1950, and it was an anti-communist organization supported, as it says here, by the Central Intelligence Agency and his allies. At its height, the CCF was active in 35 countries. In 1966, it was revealed that the CIA was instrumental in the establishment and funding of the group. And this organization will be basically like the modern open society, organizing destabilizations of various kinds within a geopolitical structure, working a lot with the cultural elite of Europe at the time. There were people involved like Benedetto Croce, which is very famous, but also Bertrand Russell, which is a very important figure. So the executive and the secretariat of this organization had very illustrious figures, but since the foundation, it was basically connected to somebody who was undoubtedly a CIA officer. I mean, it was just a way for influencing culture all over the world, with also campaigns against, for example, the Chilean poet Pablo Neruda, because he was too communist, or maybe other intellectuals who were too left-wing and too communist. So the CIA involvement was eventually revealed in 1966, but at that point, later on, so the organization kind of started to, there were, of course, a couple of publications that survived, the Australian Quadrant and the China Quarterly, but the organization and all those elite people from, there were famous poets, artists, all kinds that were part of this project. But suddenly, the organization that was also working, the European Intellectual Mutual Aid Fund, found a new guy that will save the show. In 1991, it merged with the Open Society Foundation, set up and supported by financier and philanthropist George Soros. That is the moment in which basically this old organization used by the CIA to destabilize and control culture with various means, and working together with the Tavistock Institute, for example, and a number of people here from the cultural elite, well, the situation was now in favor of a change, and this change was carried, pointing immediately into Ukraine, by George Soros. So here we are, the very foundations. The Soviet Union is falling apart, but even before it falls, George Soros, like a vulture, positions himself and is there to start eroding the fabric of any influence that Russia might have. But what is the inspiration for these colored revolutions? The inspiration is a guy called Gene Sharp. But first of all, what are these colored revolutions? Let's go and discover what they are in a couple of clips that give us a brief idea of the colored revolutions.
Color revolution. Noun. A popular and generally peaceful uprising against an authoritarian regime. Protesters wear a specific color, as in Ukraine's 2004 Orange Revolution, though the term encompasses trees, Lebanon's 2005 Cedar Revolution, flowers, Georgia's 2003 Rose Revolution, and accessories, this year's ongoing Umbrella Revolution in Hong Kong. Use it in a sentence. We see what tragic consequences the wave of so-called color revolutions led to, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on November 20th. For us, this is a lesson and a warning. We should do everything necessary so that nothing similar ever happens in Russia. Not to be confused with Color Revolution, a California-based cosmetic...
Of course. But let's be serious about these colored revolutions, and let's see really what they're all about. These organizations which you have seen are very important for our story here. There are various organizations that are used by the Open Society and are connected and are born even before the Open Societies, because I regard them, of course, as subversive, but they are themselves thinking of the organizations that protect democracy. One of them is National Endowment for Democracy, which is supporting freedom around the world. It's one of the most important. These organizations just cover-ups for intel operations, taking over country, destabilizing country, controlling countries all over the world. So here I'm showing you how the Illuminati basically work their project out with this organization that of course you're seeing one of the many organizations that help Alexei Navalny in his activities. The National Endowment for Democracy is a quasi-autonomous organization, but in reality is very much connected with the activities of the CIA. And this is quite clear even from, I can show you even from their Wikipedia, just to give you an idea of, these are not so innocent as they might seem. They want to protect democracies around the world, but as you know, Soros is well known for having done so much damage and coup d'etats all around the world than any other businessman with his financing. But like I said, some of these organizations exist even before Soros, but let's say that with Soros, they started to come together and get more and more financing. The National Endowment for Democracy is a quasi-autonomous, and Christy, can you read here what this basically this NED organization does?
Okay, the NED was created as a bipartisan private nonprofit corporation and in turn acts as a grant-making foundation. It's funded primarily by an annual allocation from the U.S. Congress.
That's it. So you are putting the money for this and you don't even probably know about it, because in one of those big packages that goes every year, they make you pay for it. And they give them 100 million so they can get that 100 million for their activities. What is written here, Christy?
Upon its founding, the NED assumed some former activities of the CIA. Political groups, activists, and some governments have said the NED has been an instrument of United States foreign policy, helping to foster regime change.
So this is one of the organizations. But let's go to the next one, because it's not all. It's kind of complex, this series of organization that Soros uses father and then son to control the whole show. Here we have an organization that talks about expanding democracy. So when they say expanding democracy, you know, they're all about expanding their dictatorship of the New World Order. Freedom is right. Freedom House is founded on the core conviction that freedom flourishes in democratic nations where governments are accountable to the people. And here is basically an image. Are these free people? Because they are a little family in a cage with a big hand. They don't seem really that free, but they seem very much inclusive, because there is, of course, a colored lady and a white guy, and this visible and invisible bars are reported from Free Them All, the Free the Yacht program to free political prisoners. So this is dedicated to free political prisoners, of course. And but what is really the Freedom House? The Freedom House, I repeat, is another outlet. Another outlet is a non-profit organization based in Washington. It was born a long time ago. Its formation precedes, Soros was still a little kid when this organization came into being in 1941. Freedom House is about advocating democracy, political freedom, and human rights. Outward, this is the official what they say, but in reality, there is something else going into this situation. So, Freedom House, it's about also connecting to propaganda, sponsored influential radio shows since the beginning of the invention of radio. So it was they had a lot of shortwave radio propaganda during the war. That is the kind of activities, and Freedom House was highly critical of McCarthyism because they were starting to get more and more leftists involved in this whole thing. So it supported Andrei Sakharov, the Soviet dissidents, and the Solidarity movement in Poland. So this is some of the work. But regarding instead George Soros, I want to go back a second to what really inspires these colored revolutions, how they are inspired, created. The Rose Revolution, Georgia. Now, how
a bunch of crooks.
They are a bunch of crooks. I think that the first thing is that of course, George Soros takes over this organization. We said it was an organization that pre-existed, but then he based his whole work on the work of a guy called Gene Sharp. So let me introduce you to the guy who has influenced all these color revolutions and who has created the 198 methods of so-called peaceful revolution, these methods of nonviolent action. I can show you what they are here, just to have an idea of how these revolutions are created, because and then there is an organization, Albert Einstein Institution, that will bring us back to an old friend of ours. It's not friend, but just somebody we know from the show, Henry Kissinger.
Oh,
so
Harry,
I mean,
you're back, Harry.
You're back because Gene Sharp is a guy who, until his death, he died very recently, in 2018, was a big player with a book that he created. A book that was entitled, let me give you the exact title of the book, How to Start a, the title of his main book was From Dictatorship to Democracy. But these are the methods, Christy, the methods used. So let's go into, for example, the various methods here. The methods of nonviolent protest and persuasion that have been spread by this Gene Sharp, who published also a book in the early 90s that influenced all the work of George Soros, and who was financed by people and directed by people like Henry Kissinger.
Okay, so the methods of nonviolent protest and persuasion are formal statements. Number 1, public speeches. Number 2, letters of opposition or support. Number 3, declarations by organizations and institutions. Number 4, signed public statements. Number 5, declarations of indictment and intention. Number 6, group or mass petitions.
Then you have, of course, all kinds of symbolic public acts, display of flags and symbolic colors, wearing of symbols, prayer and worship. This is all the woke brainwashing that is being delivered in the last...
protest. That's what they did all over here.
Delivering symbolic objects. He was the guy who invented the color revolution, because he said that revolutions need to be based on a color or a symbol. So let's go and discover who this Gene Sharp, who inspired George Soros and the color revolution, is in an interview that he gave before he died to the BBC.
Gene Sharp is a political thinker whose influence is now spoken of in the same breath as Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. But he's no platform speaker or figurehead at a demonstration, rather a quietly spoken political philosopher who's been writing about non-violent struggle for 50 years. What's changed is that his most celebrated pamphlet, From Dictatorship to Democracy, is now grabbing attention around the world. He's been hailed as having helped mold protest movements from Burma to Serbia to Egypt. What is it that Gene Sharp has been able to unlock.
And before we go back to Gene Sharp, let me introduce where does Gene Sharp come from, because it's very easy to understand this when you understand the name of his organizations and the people that have been involved with him, because the organizations that are involved with him are the most powerful ones. So Gene Sharp is not just a program of something that comes out of nothing. It is the product of a series of institutions and academic circles, but it is overall part of the New World Order, like the Albert Einstein Institution, taken, of course, the name from Albert Einstein. It is an institution which is a non-profit specializing in the study of methods of non-violent resistance in conflict. See, Gene Sharp. And when you go here, until 2000, the Institute provided funding for Einstein Institute Fellowship and was the founding body for the program of nonviolent sanctions in conflict and defense at Harvard's Center for International Affairs. Now, this Center of International Affairs is where you find the usual suspect. The Center of International Affairs was founded in 1958 by Robert R. Bowie and Henry Kissinger, assuming its current name in 1998, following an endowment by Albert and Celia Weatherhead and the Weatherhead Foundation. So now it's no longer Center for International Affairs, but Weatherhead Center for International Affairs. This has been also, and you can see also the involvement of Gene Sharp. So let's see Gene Sharp in action.
Gene Sharp, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you very much.
You've been described as the man who changed the world. Do you recognize that description?
I haven't heard exactly that one. I think
it was from your local newspaper, the Boston Globe.
Yeah, but things get exaggerated a bit.
You don't think that you've had that level of influence?
I know there's been some influence on my writings. It's always hard to judge, particularly for myself to
Definitely
judge.
went down the drain. Look where he was in 1987. Look what evil can do to a person. If there is a person who has fomented more evil than any other, is this guy. And so the product, of course, of all his evil is the instability in places like Ukraine and the threat of nuclear war that is still so present because of people like him. Because of people like him, we had the Orange Revolution. We had also other revolutions, like in Georgia. That was another important event that took place. So let's go back to what this guy said. But before, I was trying to pick up 1987 to just show you the difference with the guy.
Can I say hi to my friend?
Sure.
Hi, Lacey. That's Lacey. She's in the chat, but she's the one I did an interview with this week.
Yes.
And you can find it on this channel.
And it's very successful, and I advise you to listen to it because it's a great testimony also of my life, because Christy inserted a lot.
Yeah, I inserted a lot.
But this is the guy when he was, imagine, 1987. Look at the
Don't want to answer, that's fine. We'll do best defend Gene Sharp and
what do you look like now?
That kind of thing.
No, well, that's before he died. He died in 2018.
What are the main functions of the war system, and how can this help us find a
You see,
solution
but
to the problem
look how important is the war system for these people.
of war?
Well, war has obviously served a variety of functions in societies, probably varying with the particular society and point in history. Sometimes war is used to attack other countries. Sometimes military might is used to hold down other countries in oppression. There may be a number of economic and psychological functions of war. But one function of war that seems to me to be extremely important and perhaps indispensable is that of providing some kind of security for the country which might be attacked. People believe, and I think correctly, that if you're strong enough so that you're able to repel an attack upon you, you're less likely to be attacked than if you are weak. So war has served, war as a capacity rather than actual waging of war, has served a function of deterrence. It's also served a function of providing a means by which people believed they would be defending themselves, repelling the attack. Now, whether war has actually served that function well, whether the price that we have paid
Let's
for
go back to instead his work after all these years in an interview from about 10 years ago.
Be judged a few years ahead.
Well, certainly your most celebrated pamphlet, From Dictatorship to Democracy, it has been translated into dozens of languages.
34.
Tell me about the genesis of it. Where did it come
For
from?
all the people like Navalny they followed the manual, this book that he has written. So every single what happened in Ukraine, what happened in Georgia. I mean, people have to understand that after the publication of Gene Sharp book in the 90s, that was a moment of change. They founded, for example, as an experiment, the Otpor in Serbia in 1998, which was basically to mine the influence of Slobodan Milosevic. And then it was, of course, to create chaos and favor maybe the American interests rather than the Russian ones. But then you had, after that, the Rose Revolution in Georgia that was also totally set up, and it was something that, of course, was trying to bring towards the West an area, a state that was previously under the Soviet Union. So, and then after that, you had, of course, the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, the first attempt before the Maidan Revolution 10 years after. So let's see what this guy says.
I had been meeting with some of the Burmese Democrats, occasionally inside Burma illegally, and occasionally in the...
He says that this is what inspired him. It's complete lies. The guy, of course, was not inspired by this, because let's see where this guy is coming from. This guy is coming from a very elitarian circle. Current and former scholars of this group of people that are known as the Center for International Affairs. Just to give you a few names of the highly influential people. We had Henry Kissinger, of course, but we had also Zbigniew Brzezinski, that was another very important, extremely important advisor for the national security of the United States. So basically, two people that have been very important for the national security of the United States, and many others, American economists, political scientists of sorts. These are the people that basically military that have, in a way or in another, worked. So this guy is not just some academic.
And elsewhere in the U.S., perhaps.
This was back in the early 90s?
Yes, yes. And one of the men was Tin Mao Win, who was a Burmese Democrat in exile, principally in Thailand, but also in the U.S. He was editing a new journal called Kitpian, or New Era Journal.
All this BS that they like to like they promote themselves like it's all very natural. These revolutions come from the people, and it's kind of so you need to embrace all this bullshit. Guys, the first Orange Revolution was the revolution, for example, totally based on the work of Gene Sharp, and it was a revolution that changed forever the Ukraine, made it more frail as a country, and eventually 10 years later there will be the complete takeover, and they will kick out any Russian party connected later on with Russia. And of course the persecution got even more fierce once Putin started his military operation, because he wanted to defend the Russian populations that lived in Ukraine. But this was the Orange Revolution in 2004.
With police, with hundreds of thousands protesting the results of the election and calling for a new vote.
Hundreds of thousands of pro-democracy Ukrainians in the streets today protested against the results of the presidential election.
See how people are manipulated into believing they are protesting for democracy.
Can't they just see it?
No, they are completely blind. I mean, if Navalny would have been left to do what he wanted to do, this would have been probably the future of Russia, a country that will have collapsed eventually under protest.
Pitting their candidate, the West-leaning challenger Viktor Yushchenko, against the pro-Moscow Prime Minister Viktor Yanukovych. They claim Yanukovych's victory was rigged, with reports of ballot stuffing and voter intimidation.
Last night, the country's election commission ignored reports of fraud, declaring Kremlin-backed Viktor Yanukovych the winner. Far from backing down, Yushchenko has called for a nationwide strike, warning the country is on the verge of civil war.
If they shoot us, if they send tanks, no matter what, there's nothing that can overpower the will of the people.
Meanwhile, overseas in Ukraine today, anti-government demonstrators finally had something to celebrate. The parliament voted to disband the government of the candidate who has been declared the winner of the disputed presidential election.
The ruling called for a revote in 3 weeks.
Doctors confirmed that opposition candidate Viktor Yushchenko was poisoned during the campaign.
And then there is always somebody who gets poisoned, murdered. But if you read volume 9, in this book, I explain how a specific order of Saint Stanislaw that operates between Ukraine and Poland in that period was taking over the whole of Ukraine, and they were actually trying to make a law to outlaw them just before all this happened. So it was just like very convenient that they could in some way, I mean, we are talking about a revolution that, of course, if made in a brutal way, will have probably already destabilized the country in 2004. It took another 10 years to arrive to the level of the Maidan revolution, and the revolution that basically led to the instability that then forced in the long run Putin to intervene, because he was losing the whole country for NATO. Let's not forget that Putin invaded after Kamala Harris went to the Munich Security Conference like she did right now, and at that point they basically were talking very openly about Ukraine joining NATO. This was completely unacceptable. So these things are, of course, explained very well also in volume 9 of my Confessions, which I think you should check out.
Pat Dawson reports.
The effects were startling. The healthy, vibrant opposition candidate for Ukraine's presidency transformed in a matter of a few weeks this fall into a gravely ill man. His face almost overnight changed into a scarred, bloated mask.
It's possible that Russia poisoned this guy because, of course, poisoning is one of the specialities in this war, which is bad. It's bad in on both sides. So
have you ever been worried about anybody poisoning you?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. And I was partly damaged by the poisoning, probably in Italy, during the period of the so-called pitchfork revolution.
yes.
But that's why I'm saying, if you are involved with something that is like an uprising, like Navalny, you can't be surprised that they will poison you.
He got poisoned.
Of course, it's part. I mean, the system, when they see that they are weak, they have to then. I mean, all these protests that, of course, these actions that are the so-called peaceful manual method of nonviolent actions, which Gene Sharp has devised, then leads, though, eventually to a new totalitarianism. Because, for example, nowadays in Ukraine, there is absolutely no opposition and no party that has any vague even reference to the Russian population or the Russian culture. So this is sad. I mean, it's absolutely sad that all this is happening. But the current revolutions are part of this plan. And Putin last year said it very, very openly that this was the.
И Соединенных Штатов Америки, от которых напрямую зависит глобальная безопасность и стабильность, переживают глубокий кризис, к сожалению. В его основе принципиально разные подходы к формированию современного миропорядка. Руку помощи направила опытных спасателей. Отношения России и Соединенных Штатов Америки, от которых накопилось много противоречий. Уважаемая госпожа посол, не хочется нарушать благостной обстановки вручения верительных грамот. И знаю, что, возможно, не согласитесь с моим мнением, но не могу не сказать сегодня о том, что использование Соединенными Штатами Америки в своей внешней политике таких инструментов, как поддержка так называемых
Support the so-called current revolutions. This is what Vladimir Putin said. Vladimir Putin accused in the 2020 Alexei Navalny of being a foreign agent, a CIA agent. There was accusations also on his so-called anti-corruption organization, which we see from the video is quite corrupt, because they asked 10, 20 million. How, I mean, you can justify this kind of act of sabotage in Russia? This is unjustifiable. I mean, I understand that you want to play dirty, but this is very dirty. No, this is very dirty.
We will expand our activities.
If we had more money, we will expand our opportunities.
It's really corrupt. I mean, it's just terrible.
So, no wonder Putin got upset.
Революции. Поддержка в этой связи госпереворота в Киеве в 2014 году в конечном-то итоге и привела к сегодняшнему украинскому кризису. И дополнительно внесла свой негативный вклад в деградацию российско-американских отношений, гуманитарного форума интересов. Поздравляю его, желаю крепкого здоровья, благополучия и успехов. Сегодня в Балтийском море в прямом смысле.
Here we have a very different understanding of why Navalny might have been killed for an act of high treason as a foreign agent, but at the same time also an interest of NATO in having him killed, because then they could parade now at a moment of maximum weakness. Because you see, one of the things that happened with, of course, Kamala Harris, of course, was there. She talked with Volodymyr Zelensky, who didn't look really very happy, kind of a bit depressed about the situation, because he knows no money is coming from the US. And at this point, there was, in the Munich Security Conference, a moment in which Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, met for a panel with an American Rhino senator and I think the president or prime minister of Estonia. This was, of course, I think, an important moment of the conference. Let's check it out if we have the possibility.
Senator Pete Ricketts is joining me, along with, hello, how are you? Morning. Over there. Along with the Prime Minister of Estonia, Kaja Kallas. And last
Now, you've been in Estonia, so
Yeah.
you know exactly how much they hate the Russians and everything.
Yeah, I know.
But look also here about their contempt for democracy, because at one point they say something really incredible about the democratic process that is taking place in America, where the Republican Party doesn't want to give any money any longer for Russia, part of MAGA's, of course, a program led by Donald J. Trump.
the man in the hot seat, Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO. So this is going to be a Q&A panel. We have about 20 minutes, I believe, and then 20 minutes for Q&A from the audience. Right? Okay. So I guess I have to ask you first. You know what? May I just first ask all of
She's wearing a wig, Christina?
I think she's wearing a wig.
Okay, maybe she's wearing a wig. In any case, let me tell you something about what is said at one point here, their contempt and everything. These people have made a big fuss about the death of Alexei Navalny, okay? They repeat it over and over again during the whole event. It's like their sacrificial goat. But the thing is that they never mention Gonzalo Lira. Now, Gonzalo Lira was that blogger and journalist activist that was arrested in Ukraine and died in January. No words were given about Gonzalo Lira, but rather all this BS. And here, of course, you have this guy who represents, in theory, the Republican Party, from what I understood. But what he said, it's really absurd.
Industrial base, supply the weapons to Ukraine, but it's going to take time to get there. There may be different paths to get there. I'm reminded of Winston Churchill's quote, Americans will do the right thing.
So American will do the right thing.
After exhausting all other possibilities. So I do think we will get there. It's just democracy.
Get there meaning billions to Ukraine
Whatever.
for a war that is
Whatever.
being lost, completely lost.
Take time to process.
So the 2 points I'd like to follow up on. Is there enough time for this, as you say, messy democratic process?
Messy democratic, he called it a messy democratic process, what's happening in America. But
NATO has said, and actually key defense ministers from the frontline countries have said that you are concerned for the first time, this wasn't the case last year, that within 3 to 5 years even, Putin could test the resolve of a NATO country.
We can never take peace for granted, but I think it is important to convey that we don't see any imminent threat against any NATO ally. The world has become more dangerous, but NATO has become stronger, and the purpose of NATO is...
Now, for those who have not read my article on Zagami.com, those who have purchased volume 1 of my confessions know Jens Stoltenberg, because he got me arrested and accused me of espionage. So this is the guy who got me arrested for espionage, an accusation they eventually will lift in 2010.
I heard that name a lot when I first met you.
Yes, so this guy that I exposed together with a spy from the FSB that then in turn led me to the accusation, being accused of espionage in Norway.
To prevent war is to ensure that there is no room in Moscow for any miscalculation about NATO's readiness and resolve to protect all allies, and to make it clear that an attack on one ally will trigger a response from the whole alliance. And as long as we convey that message clearly to Moscow, no ally will be attacked. So our deterrence remains credible, and therefore we don't see any military threat against any NATO ally.
I mean, our focus should not drift from helping Ukraine militarily, because we don't have to talk about any NATO country if we stop Putin in Ukraine. And that's why we should concentrate our efforts that he stopped there.
Okay, so what is it going to take? You have heard President Zelensky lay out what he needs. We'll get back to the NATO track in a second, but just in terms of anti-air defenses, artillery, long range, all the stuff that they need, I mean, they don't have the wherewithal to control the skies or to stop, you know, the bombers from Russia. But Senator Ricketts, this is now depending on the United States. Europe has done its bit. When everybody said we're not going to, you know, pass this bill, Europe stepped up $50 billion worth of other material to Ukraine. When is the United States going to do what the United States pledged to do at the beginning of this war? That is, defend democracy.
So
make
now
sure
it's
tyranny.
almost like, you know, we are obliged and we are giving less than others after we have carried on the burden of NATO for so many decades. Here, Christian Amanpour, whatever she's called, she's one of course, the mouthpieces of this new world order. She comes up with this almost this accusation.
And dictatorship doesn't win.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. Europe still needs to do more, right? So as of last summer,
At least Europe needs to do more.
only 11 of the NATO allies were reaching the 2% GDP spending. So that still needs to be done, and I certainly applaud what Germany's doing to get there, hopefully this year, right, to get to that 2%. But there's still many of the European allies that need to get that done. With regard to the United States, look, we're democracies. Democracy is messy. And it takes time and a process to get there. Every country has their own thing. So, for example, I just mentioned, you know, the Europeans haven't gotten to the 2% yet. So, but that's probably because of the internal politics in each of those different countries, right? So it takes time to bring democracies along. And the same thing is going to happen in the United States. We will get there with regard to making the investments.
Yeah, sure, we will get there. In the meantime, in Volume 5 of my Confessions, a very interesting author and Freemason, Mark Stavish, gave me a very interesting interview. I repeated 2 times interesting. I should have said it only once, but in any case, it's very interesting. So 3 times. In this interview with Mark Stavish, he said basically, and he is definitely somebody who has a lot of Masonic experience, that the EU political correctness and progressive politics are essentially materialistic in nature. I do not say atheistic, although that will do, but there are schools of metaphysical atheism, such as Buddhism. So materialism is nature of communism, and of course Satanism is formal and informal definitions. So also he talks about political correctness, saying that from political correctness to hyper-nationalism that can keep people angry, distracted, and afraid is satanic, because people get distracted.
Yeah, we're still like that right now, this whole country.
So this is in Volume 5 if you are interested. But remember, another way of promoting yourself is, of course, associating yourself as a sponsor to our show. You can do it just by sending us a donation, and you can also donate anonymously. So you can show your appreciation, you can show that you are actually supporting our show, but you can do it either anonymously or either publicly. No, Christine?
Yeah, I just put anonymous next to your name if you want to remain anonymous, and you don't have to say your name if you don't want.
Some people like to be themselves anonymous, keep themselves anonymous. GoFundMe is one of the most used platforms at the moment, and for us at least it still works. For other people I know they've been censoring, but for us it has actually worked. We have been talking about, of course, this geopolitical situation and how these colored revolutions have been methodically used to destabilize the world, because they have not been used only in Europe. Later on, I mean, they started maybe with Serbia, then they went on with Georgia, then Ukraine, but then you have also those so-called Arab Springs that are all part of the same thing. These organizations are at times also political. I showed you earlier the some organizations like the Freedom House, like the NDI. It's instead another organization which I want to show you, which works very closely with the American Democratic Party, organizations that are born to become then vehicles for intelligence operations and destabilizing foreign countries in one way or another. You see, here it says, I'm honored to join this incredibly talented team working on the front line, supporting and defending democracy for 4 decades in over 150 countries. So, President of the National Democratic Institute. And this is the democratic version of expanding their own, no? Yeah. It's and then you have the Republican version of the same kind of organization. So you have both parties that are trying to advance democracies, and both parties that take enormous amounts of money from the usual Soros, who seems to be one of the main sponsors of this new world disorder. Advancing democracy worldwide. You see, this is all those rhinos, they are all connected to this International Republic Institute. They are the ones who want to, of the Republican Party, that have signed in the Senate, some of them, the petition so they could pass this bill with the money for Ukraine, and they are trying to destabilize the world, not to advance democracy. But you see, all these organizations that advance democracies, in reality, they're advancing the dictatorship of the AI-driven society, the smart cities, and what I've been trying to explain in volume 9, but also in volume 7 of my confessions, is the cyber Satan that is rising to the top of our society and is driving our society. But let me show you something else. Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson went to, we talked about Tucker Carlson last week. There was a lot of people, Leo, Tucker Carlson is a hero, this, that, and the other. But then he ended up, after a few days, participating to the World Government Summit, which is basically an organization I discuss very much here in Volume 9 because it's connected to Klaus Schwab. So I don't know, what's wrong with Tucker Carlson, but in any case, he went there and they asked him about Alexei Navalny, and this is what he said. And by the way, they asked him before Alexei Navalny was found dead. So quite interesting what he says.
Okay, I'll tell you. You should challenge in the rules of an interview, and you're a master in your business. It's not for me to give you a lecture about that, but you should challenge some ideas. For instance, you didn't talk about freedom of speech in Russia. You did not talk about Navalny, about assassinations, about restrictions on opposition in the coming elections.
I didn't talk about the things that every other American media outlet talks about.
Why?
Exclusively.
Yes, this
because
is my
those
question.
are covered, and because I have spent my life talking to people who run countries in various countries and have concluded the following: that every leader kills people, including my leader. Every leader kills people. Some kill more than others. Leadership requires killing people. Sorry, that's why I wouldn't want to be a leader. That press restriction is universal in the United States. I know because I've lived it. Ask my former. I've had a lot of jobs. And I've done this for 34 years, and I know how it works. And there's more censorship in Russia than there is in the United States, but there's a great deal in the United States. And so, at a certain point, it's like people can decide whether they think, what countries they think are better, what systems they think are better. I just want to know what he thinks. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
So this question, very interesting. Just before Navalny gets killed, and Tucker Carlson talks about leaders that have to kill.
In Russia. You did not talk about Navalny, about assassinations, about restrictions on opposition in the coming elections.
I didn't talk about the things that every other American media outlet talks about.
Why?
Exclusively.
Yes, this is
because
my
those
question.
are covered, and because I have spent my life talking to people who run countries in various countries and have concluded the following: that every leader kills people, including my leader. Every leader
kills people. I mean, quite a prophecy. Just a couple of days before Navalny gets killed, every leader kills people. So write that down. Did Tucker Carlson know that Navalny was about to be executed? We know that he is definitely a sacrificial lamb to this new world order.
So
we don't want to say he's a hero because he's no hero. He was corrupt. We showed the video. So he was a corrupt guy who wanted to destabilize this country. Please, Christine.
No, I was just wondering when was his last time seen? Like, was he seen a lot?
He was seen the day before,
Okay,
apparently.
But did anybody actually see him and like document him, or is it just people that
No,
say?
no, apparently there was a video, something he looked. Of course, we don't know
Because they
if
could
the
have killed him
body.
ages ago and then had somebody.
No, there was apparently a video testimony that he was able to deliver that was rather recent. But he said, if they kill me, you can. He actually said that.
Was his wife in on it?
I mean, he's basically announcing his almost
That's
certain
what I
death
understand.
in this remote colony above the Arctic
If
Circle.
I was so evil, I would not be announcing my death. I'd be wanting to live because I would not want to face God. So.
It's definitely interesting how the guy announced his own death. I don't have the video now here with me, but Navalny basically announced his own death just not so long ago. And so it is quite incredible that, I mean, everybody needs to understand that definitely Navalny's death hides something criminal in nature, but it's also true that if he has he was supposedly he organized a coup d'etat against Putin. Well, in that case, Putin is justified to kill him. Let's not forget that Alexei Navalny was half Ukrainian. He was grown up by his grandmother who was Ukrainian. He went often to Ukraine. He is very much also an Ukrainian, not only a Russian. So that also is something that in this moment of great conflict between the two cultures is important. Now, I want to close today's show, though, by showing you another weak spot in the Biden administration. I'm talking about Rachel Levin, the transgender guy, woman, whatever he is, he wants to be defined to, that is in charge of our health, who basically is saying that the great problem for the Black community is climate change. It's particularly affecting the Black people. This is one. These are the problems that the military in America have, while the world is getting more and more entrenched in a possible nuclear war.
I want to see it.
I'm Admiral Rachel Levine. This Black History Month, I'm pleased to partner with OMH in advancing better health through better understanding for Black
Obviously,
communities.
they have added the laughs, but it is like a Saturday night episode here.
Watch this. It
live
doesn't make me
episode.
feel good.
Climate change is having a disproportionate effect on the physical and mental health of Black communities. Black Americans are more likely than white Americans to live in areas and housing that increase their susceptibility to climate-related health issues. And 65% of Black Americans report feeling anxious about climate change's impact. Through our Office of Climate Change and Health Equity and the Office of Environmental Justice, we're working with providers and community leaders to identify innovative approaches that empower communities to address the health consequences linked to climate change. Visit hhs.gov for more information and tune in next Thursday to hear from another HHS leader on how you can contribute to advancing better health for Black communities.
Yes, climate change. Yes, whatever. Rambo, we are at the end of our show. Thank you for supporting the show. The sponsors today?
Margaretha Minta and Bruce Kodish. Thank you very much.
Become a
guys.
sponsor of our glorious show for a new episode next week, next Saturday. But if you encourage us, we might bring you another episode. So please encourage us. This is it's a way for us to give back. When you give to us, we give back. We have always done that. Rambo, how you doing? You want to dance with us?
No, he does not.
He
So
does
he's
not?
about to hit the road because.
Yeah, really?
Okay, say hi. Say hello. And now I have to dance.
Here comes the devil.
Wait,
Oh, here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, the devil with the devil says I. Shh, look out for the devil. Look out for the devil. Look out for the devil. Oh, the devil with the devil says I. You're so afraid of old man Satan. Now, why don't you stop your hesitating? You're gonna be a long time dead, so the devil with the devil says I. You're always giving me the dickens, telling me that life's no easy pickings. But just as long as I have fun, why, the devil with the devil says I. You can have your social teas and bingo for your fun. But the things I like to do, you stop me one by one. Now even if you make me stronger, that ain't gonna make me live no longer. So even if I go to
From another time, another place.
the devil with the devil says I. Look out for the devil, look out for the devil. Oh, the devil with the devil says I.
They want to transform Navalny in a sort of martyr, almost a saint. In any case, Christy, what's up? Let's see us next week. Remember that. Don't miss the Leo Zagami Show.